You won't pay $100 for a new hard drive, okay? Enjoy paying $20 to $1,000 for my time to deal with the problem. I had a job where I had a computer which was, incidentally, also the web server for a very important internal web application. I thought this was really stupid that it wasn't in a server room being managed by IT, but for some weird reason they wouldn't do it. I didn't use this application or have anything to do with it, but it took up a large chunk of the hard drive and made it slow. I didn't even know what it was on the hard drive. So there was a bunch of old development software I could never remove. Fear of harming the application. I was also not permitted to turn the machine off or even sign up nights or weekends, so it would be running whenever anyone needed the application. I had to just lock the screen and leave it. This application was apparently something developed by my department before I joined the company, and everyone involved with it was no longer there, and nobody really knew anything about how it worked, other than that this machine had to be running and sign in, and it wasn't developed in our normal system and wasn't in our code repository. By the end of my time with the company, they'd had such turnover that I was literally the only person in the department who knew it was even there. I was a web developer, and I required a vast amount of disk space for my work, for reasons mostly relating to how moronic management was about process. I had to keep 3 complete copies of everything the company ever developed. I often ran out of disk space. I had to use increasingly desperate measures to deal with this, up to and including deleting anything that Microsoft included with Windows that I didn't actually need, like the camera app on a PC with no camera. It quickly got to the point that I had to call IT to tell them my PC was becoming unusable due to disk space and could they please do something about it, and suggested that because of this application, they might want to take this PC into management and give me a different one. I thought they would do something like replace the computer. Antical would be fine as long as it didn't have this application on it, or give it a larger internal disk, or maybe even just attach an external disk. I would still have a slow machine, but I'd have had the space to do my work. They told me that I'd have to remove what I could and defrag the disk to make more space, and I would just have to suffer, and please don't call them about this again. I talked to my boss and was told that IT's word was final, and I would just have to deal with it. So it'd get bad, I'd remove what I could and start at the frontnet, and the machine would become too slow for me to use for about 24 hours, during which time I could do no work. This happened about once a week, so it took about 1/5 of my time, not counting time spent looking for stuff to delete. I kept telling Manglement this was happening, and they kept telling me to shut up and deal with it. But at least when they wanted me to do stuff, and it was, my computer is busy clearing disk space and is presently unusable, they moaned but understood and left me alone. So because IT was too lazy to do anything and Manglement was too lazy to go to bat for me, and the company was unwilling to spend $100 on an external hard drive, they got to spend over $20,000 to $1,000 a year on salary for me to sit around and wait for the machine to make some space so I could do my work. That wasn't my salary. That was the portion of my salary that they were wasting on this problem, not counting the value of the time of everyone else that had to do my work while I couldn't. And then it was getting to the point that I wouldn't be able to deal with it at all. There wasn't anything left to delete, and defragging wasn't reclaiming any more space, and the company's internal software took up more and more space every day, and I estimated I had about a week left before it became fully unusable, when I had a heart attack and a stroke and never went back. I occasionally think, with admittedly some glee, of the panic it must have caused when they no doubt turned off the computer and sent it to IT to be wiped, and a few hours later panicked users started calling, demanding to know where their precious application that they couldn't live without was. Only for my evil Manglement to say, honestly, what application?
Bigoted Dude gets arrested because he thinks a woman can't fix computers. Long-time reader, first-time poster. I don't even know if it goes here, so please correct me if I'm wrong. Back in 2006, I worked for one of those big box stores that had an IT desk, formerly known as NerdHerd, lol, where people could bring devices in to get serviced if there was a problem. We were located in Columbus, GA, which is right over a bridge from Phoenix City, AL, This is important because where our store was placed, we would normally get a lot of servicemen and women coming up from Fort Benning who were generally pretty cool. But we would also get folks, mostly from Alabama, who were, let's just say, slightly unfavorable to folks of a certain skin color or gender. No offense to those who live in AL who are totally awesome. You know who you are. Now, I'm a 5'1" girl who, at the time, weighed a total of 120 pounds soaking wet. I was practically a hobbit. I was also one of the lead technicians in the department. I was the one the new hires went to if they were confused or couldn't troubleshoot certain problems. The team I worked with was amazing. The general manager of the store was great and the supervisor of my department was the man. I would regularly go out for drinks with these people. One of the best places I've ever worked, even though it was retail. One day, I'm working the counter to check customers and do evaluations and diagnostics to give an estimate of what the repair price would be. In comes, let's call him Joe. He wore a cut-off T-shirt, worn denim jeans, and a baseball cap with a Confederate flag on it that just barely covered his business in the front, party in the back haircut. I am not one to judge on looks. I've had plenty of people come in looking exactly the same way this guy did who have been an absolute delight to work with. Never judge a book by its cover, kids, but I still have my defenses up, just in case. I really hoped it wasn't going to go the not-so-friendly route. I was unfortunately wrong about dear Joe. Joe walks up to the counter with his PC tower and practically slams the unit on the desk. I need this fixed. It's broken. Me? Okay. Sir, let me have a look and I'll see if I can. Joe cuts me off and stares at me with a disgusted look on his face. Joe, excuse me. Me, if you give me a moment, sir, I'll be able to take a look at your computer and... I'll know. It was at this point that I realized where this was inevitably going to go wrong. Me, unfortunately, sir, I won't be able to give you an estimate if you don't let me diagnose your computer. Joe, there's no way in hell a woman knows about computers. I'm not letting you touch my computer. Get me the manager. Oh, yes. I thought this is going to be fucking awesome. I'm sure he wanted to talk to the general manager of the store, but I couldn't resist. Cue malicious compliance. I could have pulled the I'm the manager thing because I was one of the senior staff, but my direct boss was actually out back working on repair projects, and I couldn't help but get excited about how this was going to go down. Me, as lovely as sweet tea, of course, sir, right away, sir. Mike, my supervisor, the guy who ran our department, and not the general manager of the store, was elbow deep in a motherboard replacement when I walked in and gave him the biggest, shit-eating grin. Me, Mike, there's a guy out there asking for the manager. He looks at me confused because he was just supervisor, but I then proceeded to tell him exactly what was waiting for him out front. His face split into the brightest smile. He then proceeded to walk out to the front. Have I mentioned that Mike is a 6'3", 280-pound black man who looked like he could eat a Mack truck for lunch? He was such a big, lovable teddy bear. We all adored him. The moment Mike stepped out, the customer freaked. Mike, hello, sir. I hear there's a problem. You lost it. It started with a fuck no before devolving into a racist tirade that I have never witnessed in my life. I'm from Massachusetts, so this was awful, yet amazing to watch, like a car crash. I just couldn't look away. Not that we have no racism in the Northeast, but damn, Joe kept screaming, using the nastiest slur. You know the one. Over and over again while staff and customers alike watched in blatant horror. Security ended up having to come over to try to calm the man down. Our entire security team was black as well, so, naturally, Joe went even more crazy. Eventually, the police had to be called because the man was threatening me, calling me a cunt and a bitch, and threatening security and my boss, using that word that is not okay. My general manager got called out of his office and immediately called the police to have the man removed. God bless whichever dispatcher who received the call was, because they dispatched black officers to the scene. Me and my general manager were literally the only white people involved in this train wreck, aside from Bigoted Joe, and I watched with unbridled glee as Joe was cuffed and taken away by the police. Watching Joe foam at the mouth as he was dragged away made my whole week. Thank you for the entertainment, Bigoted Joe. Thanks to all of you telling me about Chuck. Now I'm up at 5 a.m. binging this show. Lol.
The $15,000 equipment is too expensive for your department to purchase. Why don't you just rent it for $48,000 a year? Back in the days when 33.6 kbps modems were hot shit, I worked for the engineering department of a growing company. This company had started small. It was privately owned, and the VPs had all put in a portion of their own money to start the company. By this time in the story, they were finally making a respectable 30 to 40 million a year in profits. But they still acted like a small company, penny pinching. Our engineering department was designing circuit boards with embedded computer systems, and to program these instead of soldering the microcomputer to the board, we would solder on a microcontroller socket, and then plug in an in-circuit emulator that would pretend it was a microcontroller and allow the programmer to create the required program. This in-circuit emulator, or IC, was made by Hitachi. It plugged into a free PCI slot on your PC and had a ribbon cable that would attach to the specialized microcontroller die that plugged into the socket. It was a mess. It gave our tiny IT department headaches, and it cost $15,000, and it was an absolute necessity for most of our most popular product lines, and there was only one of them. And we were renting it. It cost $4,000 a month. The first month we had it, our CTO and marketing VP planned our whole new product line around this family of microcontrollers. So at the end of the month, us engineers asked management to buy this for us, since we would be using it for a while. The engineering VP saw the price tag and told us to just rent it. Surely we would be done with it soon. Engineers, being practical, forgot about the objection and just put our noses to the wheel. The CTO and marketing made plans to keep us busy using this microcontroller line for a while. They pre-ordered a few million chips. After a year, the VP of Finance asked about this recurring contract line item. They called the engineer who had originally started the contract. The engineer helpfully forwarded the approval from the engineering VP, and his later email asking to buy it, and the VP's reply where he demurred. By the end of the week, this tour was ours, along with a second one, since Finance determined that product rollout was being affected by not enough access to the equipment. Hitachi just gave us the first one, stopped charging us, and never asked for it back. We paid $15,000 for a second one. No one got fired or demoted, but at the next department meeting, the engineering VP tried to tell us that we didn't have enough money to upgrade our PCs, that one engineer spoke up would $40,000 cover it. The company found the money.
Check out my other excellent videos